Today's video is going to be about the Old Timer Trapper Buzzsaw Pocket Knife. My name is Brian and you're watching Survival on Purpose. Welcome back to Survival on Purpose. Thanks for joining me. As I said, today's video is going to be about the Old Timer. Zoom in on that, focus. The Old Timer Buzzsaw Trapper Pocket Knife. And this is a really classic design from Old Timer, which as you can see is made by Schrade. And Schrade and Old Timer both basically fall under the Taylor Brands umbrella, but this knife features a couple of cool features. It's got the blade and it's also got a really neat little saw with it. So what I thought we'd do is go and swap over to the stump top, give you a quick detailed view of the specs, and we'll show a couple of examples of how this knife performs, do a little testing, and wrap it all up. All right, well this again is the Old Timer Buzzsaw Trapper folding knife. Pretty classic design with a couple of updates. It features a 3.7-inch clip point blade and a saw blade, both made of 7CR17 high carbon stainless. The handle's classic Old Timer saw cut handles with silver nickel bolsters and brass pins. This knife has a closed length of 4.1 inches in your pocket, and the overall length open is 7.8 inches. A couple of extras with this knife are a field pick and a pair of tweezers, and it comes with a nice molded leather belt sheath, all for under $25. Okay, so that's the specs and details of the trapper knife, buzzsaw trapper knife actually. I think it's called a buzzsaw because of the saw, but again, it's just a classic clip point blade. So with the saw and the pick, get a little close up with this pick. This thing is really sharp, so you could use this for an awl probably, and I mean it's got a nice point on it. If you need to get a splinter out or whatever, pretty good deal there. The tweezers, here's the tweezers, and I have to say, get these where hopefully you can see them, they are, compared to a Swiss Army knife type tweezer, a Victorinox tweezer, they leave a little to be desired. They just don't seem to be quite as precise. I had to bend them kind of out, and one of the tests I tried, one of the examples I used, I guess if I can reach and pull a hair off my arm with them, then that's pretty good. Let me see if I can get it. If I can reach and pull a hair off my arm, that's pretty good, and they did that, so took a little adjustment, but they're okay. Again, I don't think they're as good as a Swiss Army knife tweezer, but if you had a tick, they could definitely get a tick off, or a splinter. You could probably get a splinter out, which is, you know, what I would think would be some of the main uses of these things. So, but other than that, and they fit, as you can see, which one's which? They fit in the handle, just like a Swiss Army knife, kind of. They just store in the handle. Pick stores in here, and it's got a nice, by the way, a nice brass head on it, square brass head, so pretty solid. I do like that. Pretty good. Now this is not a toothpick like the little plastic Swiss Army knife. I guess you could, but I wouldn't do that if I were you. So this is not a lock blade, by the way. As you can see, it's just a standard folding knife, and the saw does lock though. So the saw's got like a liner lock right here, and you can just push it backwards out of the way to close the saw. Well, let's see. Let me do this way. I don't want to cut my finger. So you push it out of the way and close the saw. So the knife blade itself does not lock again, but the saw does lock open. So let's readjust the camera and show you some cutting and carving, just some little basic knife stuff with this thing, see how well it works. Okay, also before we do that, I wanted to show you the sheath. This is, in my opinion, a really nice sheath. Again, this whole package is under $25. It's a nice molded leather sheath. It has a belt loop on back of it, a nice snap. It's just a very, again, classic leather sheath design, belt sheath design. The knife fits in this thing really well. Nice package. So doesn't weigh a whole lot, probably 3 or 4 ounces. So let's see how well this thing carves. Nothing fancy. This is, again, it's not a one-tool survival type knife. It's a pocket knife, but it's definitely pretty sharp. So we should maybe be able to make a feather stick with it. bark and all. So pretty good feathers, I think. Get a little close up there. Pretty decent job. They've got some nice curls on them. A little heavier carbon. Maybe you want to make a little spit to roast something cooks up over the fire. Pretty good job with that. So the knife does a fine job for carving. I mean, this is just a whittling knife. It's what I would call a whittling knife. It does a great job of whittling or carving wood. So what about the saw? That's what I think is a really big advantage to this knife. These little saws like this are just always really handy to have. If you're trying to cut something to get a nice straight, you can do it with a straight edge knife, but it takes a lot of work to really get a flat cut there. Whereas with the saw, oh yeah, that cuts like butter. Does a great job. Absolutely a great job. So these are pretty aggressive teeth. They're not offset, so they don't cut a wider chamfer, a wider groove than the saw blade, but it did a pretty good job, no doubt about it. If you're trying to make a primitive trap, a trigger stick or something like that, it's just a real handy thing to have. You can cut very precise cuts and lengths and measurements. If you want to make a notch, you can get a really straight, even, nice notch without the lock blade again. So we got the lock blade again. So you get a really nice, clean, precise notch using the saw and the knife blade. I'm trying to push the liner lock and it doesn't have one. I keep forgetting, but pretty good job. Okay, well, I almost hate to do this because it's going to dirty the knife up, but I think it's worthwhile to find out if this thing will strike a ferro rod, because it's always good to have the ability to do that in emergency. And it doesn't have a super sharp spine on it. We're going to try and see what happens. I need to turn around this way. It's not great. Let's see. Let's open the saw. Maybe the back of the saw with it locked open will work a little better. Okay, it did it, but I honestly, probably not the greatest choice for a striker on a ferro rod, fire steel, ferrocerium rod, whatever you want to call it. All right, well, once again, that's the old timer buzz saw trapper, and with the classic clip point blade and the little saw blade and the pick and the tweezers and the nice molded leather sheath. It's a nice knife. It's very classic, old-timey design. Nice belt sheath with it. And I think Schrade / Old Timer has done a really good job again. They're putting out really good edges, and this is again is one of those classic kind of knives that maybe your granddad might have carried one just like it. I like the addition of the saw. I think the saw blade is really sharp. It does a great job. The edge is really good. It does a great job of carving, whittling, whatever you want to call it. Not so good on the ferro rod. It's just not quite sharp enough spine. But, you know, it's not what it's designed for, so I can't really fault it for that. It's not a survival knife. It's a pocket knife or a belt knife, folding knife, whatever you want to call it then. Either way, I think it's a pretty neat little knife. Pretty good value, and you can't go wrong with a classic knife like this. So, hope this has been helpful. Well, as always, thanks for watching Survival on Purpose. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for clicking the thumbs up down below. If you like the video, let Google know you like this kind of video. Share it with your friends if you think they'll like it. And please leave your comments below. Let me know what you think about this knife. If maybe you've got one, maybe you know somebody that does, or maybe this is your granddad had something just like it. It brings back old memories. That's what's so great about this YouTube community, is we can share a lot of information with each other and we can all learn from each other. So I'd be interested in hearing what you have to say, and I really appreciate all your support. Once again, my name's Brian. You're watching Survival on Purpose. Remember, survival's not an accident, so be prepared. See you next time.